Because rest and motion, and of course we are going to start a chapter number 2, which is kinematics. So basically, first discussing the definition of kinematics, we have to see this is just the study of motion of an object without considering the detail of its cause. So अब अगर हमारे पास एक object है and we don't have to discuss how much which body causes its motion, and we are just going to discuss how much how faster it's moving, how much velocity it has, and how much acceleration it has, how much mass it has, all that. Then such kind of study is called the kinematics, right? So here we just have to discuss the properties of an object when it's in the state of rest or motion without discussing the cause that produces that motion, right? So basically, coming towards the topic, which is rest and motion, first we have to discuss rest. ये बिल्कुल सिंपल है, जैसे हम लोग कंसिडर कर सकते हैं जब भी कोई बॉडी स्टेशनरी हो या मूव ना कर रही हो विद रिस्पेक्ट टू इट्स सराउंडिंग. इट्स इम्पॉर्टेंट टू नो दैट यहाँ पर बिल्कुल सिंपल एंड डेली लाइफ यूज़ की एग्जांपल आप ले सकते हैं. जस्ट लाइक अ पर्सन विच इज़ स्टैंडिंग जस्ट beside a tree, right? So the state when a body does not change its position with respect to an observer, then such state is called the state of rest, right? So we have taken the example of a person who is just standing right beside a tree. Now इस person के लिए ये tree in a state of rest है because this tree is not changing its position, right? You can see it over here. ये tree उठकर कहीं और नहीं जाएगा, ना ही ये person यहाँ से हिलेगा. In that case, the position of both the observer and the object stays the same, right? So in this case, tree won't change its position, therefore the tree is said to be in a state of rest. Motion is the state when a body changes its position with respect to an observer. So motion की हम लोग बहुत ज़्यादा examples ले सकते हैं. For example, a common example is a car moving in a certain direction with respect to an observer on the road. Remember that observer is the person जो कि उस कार को देखेगा and he will observe that this car is moving, right? So ये आप भी हो सकते हैं, कोई और person भी हो सकता है जो कि इस कार को observe करेगा. That is the observer. This person is the observer. With respect to observer का मतलब है with respect to this person. इस person ने जो observe किया उसके according. अगर मैं कहती with respect to a person standing over here, then इसका मतलब ये होता इस पर्सन ने जो ऑब्जर्वेशंस रिकॉर्ड की उसके मुताबिक. ओके, सो इट ऑल डिपेंड्स अपॉन कि पर्सन कौन है एंड पर्सन कहाँ खड़ा है. लेट्स सपोज वी हैव टू पर्सन्स, एक यहाँ पर खड़ा है एंड यहाँ पर एक वॉक कर रहा है. इन दिस केस इस पर्सन के लिए इसकी स्पीड कुछ और होगी, इसकी मोशन कुछ और होगी, इसके लिए ज़्यादा स्पीड से जा रही होगी. बट एक पर्सन जो इस कार के साथ साथ भाग रहा है उसके लिए कार की स्पीड कम होगी, कार की मोशन कम होगी. सिमिलरली हम लोग आगे चलकर इसकी रेफरेंस फ्रेज भी डिस्कस कर सकते हैं. कमिंग टूवर्ड्स द टॉपिक विच इज़ पोजीशन. ठीक है, पोजीशन इज़ बेसिकली द लोकेशन ऑफ एन ऑब्जेक्ट. जब भी आपके पास इस चैप्टर में पोजीशन का वर्ड यूज़ होगा, यू डोंट हैव टू बी कंफ्यूज अबाउट दैट. दिस इज़ जस्ट द लोकेशन ऑफ एन ऑब्जेक्ट विद रिस्पेक्ट टू एन ऑब्जर्वर. अब इसका मतलब ये है लोकेशन ऑफ एन ऑब्जेक्ट इज़ अ कॉमन टर्म, बट विद व्हाट डज इट मीन बाय विद रिस्पेक्ट टू एन ऑब्जर्वर? Of course, let's suppose this person is standing right over here and the car is just lying over here. ठीक है, this is just standing over here. Now इस person के मुताबिक कार उससे 3 meters दूर है. Okay, but इस person के मुताबिक कार उससे 5 meters दूर है. Then of course position इन दोनों persons के मुताबिक different है. इस person के मुताबिक इसकी position 3 meters away from this person है. इस पर्सन के मुताबिक position of the car is 5 meters away from this position from this person. So it all depends upon the position of the observer and the position of the object itself, right? So we can take some examples. The person standing 3 meters away from the road, right? So we have 3 meters, which is the distance away from the road, is the reference. Okay, 3 meters with respect to the road. Okay, 3 meters with respect to the observer, and हमारे पास तो second हमारे पास फ्रेम आ जाएगा, दैट वुड बी योर रोड, राइट. सो अगर आपके पास एक पर्सन है जो कि रोड से 3 मीटर्स अवे है, इट मीन्स द रोड इज 3 meters away from the person, the person is 3 meters away from the road, so both are relative, right. Book lying 2 centimeters away from the pen. In this case, book आपके पास ऑब्जेक्ट है 2 सेंटीमीटर से डिस्टेंस फ्रॉम द पेन. पेन आपके पास रेफरेंस है. ओके, आप पेन से कंपेयर करेंगे कितना ज़्यादा दूर है. सो पेन इज़ द रेफरेंस, 2 सेंटीमीटर इज द डिस्टेंस, एंड बुक इज़ द observer or is the object. Car, here car is the object, it is parked 1 kilometer away from the house. Car is the object, 1 kilometer is the distance, and house is the reference object. Okay. The fourth example is person standing 1 kilometer away from his seat on moving train. Now this is an interesting example. Let's suppose we have a train which is moving in a certain direction. अगर हमारे पास एक ऐसी ट्रेन है जो कि किसी डायरेक्शन में मूव कर रही है, अंदर कुछ लोग बैठे हुए हैं, देन इन दैट केस एक पर्सन एक सीट पर बैठा होगा जस्ट लाइक दिस, एंड दूसरा पर्सन दूसरी सीट पर. देन वुड यू जस्ट टेल मी, इन दिस केस इस पर्सन के लिए ये पर्सन कितना दूर होगा? आइदर इट वुड बी जस्ट 1 मीटर अवे, और क्या हम इसमें मोशन ऑफ ट्रेन भी ऐड करेंगे? ऑफ कोर्स. अगर हम सिर्फ 2 ऑब्जर्वर्स को ले रहे हैं, इट मीन्स दैट वी हैव टू निग्लेक्ट द मोशन ऑफ द ट्रेन इटसेल्फ. इन दिस केस द पर्सन स्टैंडिंग 1 meter away from his seat will here we won't be considering the motion of the train, right? So the train actually is moving, but we have to discuss the person which is standing and the frame of reference with respect to which he is 1 meter away, right? So ये सारा कुछ relative है. It means it all depends upon the observer, the object, and their distance, right? Okay, coming towards the types of motion, there are basically 3 types of motion: translatory motion, rotatory motion, and vibratory motion. Translatory motion can further be divided into 3 parts. First, discussing the translatory motion, the change in position of a body as a whole. So take an example of a horse or a car. Whenever a car or a horse moves, it moves as a whole. जब भी कार आपके पास मूव करेगी, of course उसका एक पार्ट अलग डायरेक्शन में और दूसरा पार्ट अलग डायरेक्शन में नहीं जाएगा. पूरी कार एक सर्टेन डायरेक्शन में मूव करेगी, चाहे वो स्ट्रेट जाए, चाहे वो कर्व्ड पाथ फॉलो करे, या फिर चाहे वो किसी भी रैंडम पाथ को फॉलो करे, लेकिन कार एज अ होल ट्रैवल करेगी. कार के पार्ट्स डिफरेंट डायरेक्शन में नहीं जाएंगे. देन दिस काइंड ऑफ मोशन इज कॉल्ड translatory motion, right? The change in position of a body as a whole. When we consider about the body as a whole, then we are going to discuss, it means that we are going to discuss the translatory motion. Now, the types of translatory motion are rectilinear motion, simply motion in a straight line. Of course, you are going to use the definitions included in your book, in your textbook, but these are just key points for you. Rectilinear motion is the motion in a straight line. For example, a car moving in a straight line on a straight road. Curvilinear motion, this is just the motion of a body in a circular or curved path. You can take an example of a fan spinning about its axis, or you can take an example of a clock, or you can take an example of a car moving along a curved road, right? So the third one is random motion. It is just the irregular motion. For example, the fluttering of a butterfly, or you can take an example of a car just following a random path, or a person that is going on a random pathway, or it's following a random path. Second is the rotatory motion. Remember that these 3 kinds, or these 3 types, were the types of translatory motion. Okay, we have covered the translatory motion. The second type is rotatory motion. Rotatory motion is definitely the motion in a circular path, right? So, what is the difference between curvilinear motion and the rotatory motion? Basically, curvilinear motion is motion in a circular or curved path, it doesn't mean that it should have the same center. Let's suppose a car goes in a straight direction, then it takes a certain turn, right? So this is curvilinear motion, a kind of translatory motion. But whenever a car moves on a circular road, now we know that this circular road has a certain central point. This circle has a certain central point. Then this kind of motion, this circular motion, is called rotatory motion, right? Third one is a vibratory motion. Vibratory motion is basically the to and fro motion, okay, or oscillatory motion. To and fro का मतलब है that जस्ट एक बॉडी अगर एक पोजीशन से थोड़ा सा डिस्प्लेस हो, राइट, वो उस पोजीशन पर वापस आए एंड देन अगेन डिस्प्लेसमेंट स्टार्ट कर दें. फॉर एग्जाम्पल द मोशन ऑफ स्प्रिंग. यू कैन टेक एन एग्जाम्पल ऑफ स्प्रिंग. स्प्रिंग के साथ आप क्या करेंगे? जस्ट यू विल टेक अ स्प्रिंग. स्प्रिंग लेने के बाद यू विल जस्ट स्ट्रेच इट. एक स्प्रिंग लें, उसे स्ट्रेच करें. You will notice it will just start moving to and fro, to and fro, to and fro. Vibratory motion show करेगा. So these types of motions are called vibratory motion, and these are just to and fro motion. Okay, coming towards the last point. Okay, the objects can be at rest and motion at the same time. There can be two different observations for the same event. Okay, ये important point है. There can be two different observations for the same event. Let's suppose a person is standing inside the train, okay, and उस person के साथ एक और person भी बैठा हुआ है. दो seats हैं, दोनों पर person बैठे हुए हैं, and a person is standing outside the train. Then for the person which is just sitting right next to the object or the person that we are discussing, let me draw it over here for you. Okay, so इस person के लिए ये person in a state of rest है. Although the train is moving, but this person would say that this person is just sitting still and this person is in a state of rest. But what would happen if we now just consider that train, that the person who is just standing right over here, for this person, this object or the person inside the train will be in a state of motion, right? So therefore we can say that object can be at rest and motion at the same time. इस person के लिए this person was in the state of rest, but इस person के लिए, इस observer के लिए, this person was in a state of motion. Therefore rest and motion are relative. Relative का मतलब ये है it depends upon the observer, कि इनको जो भी आपका ऑब्जर्वर है वो किस स्टेट में है एंड वो किस पोजीशन में है. द स्टेट ऑफ रेस्ट और मोशन डिपेंड्स अपॉन द स्टेट ऑफ रेस्ट और मोशन ऑफ द ऑब्जर्वर. In this case, the observer was also moving with the object. But in this case, the observer was at rest as compared to the object, right? So this was all for today. If you have any question, you can just ask me freely. Thank you so much, everyone.